Today we are joined by Safeena Husain, founder of Educate Girls, a non-profit working to bring out-of-school girls back into classrooms and improve learning outcomes in some of India's most underserved communities. And this year, Educate Girls became the first Indian non-profit to win the Ramon Magsaysay Award, often called Asia's Nobel Prize. And we are here to learn more about her journey, the challenges of girls' education, and what this recognition means for India's civil society. Hello, Safina. So I
Hi,
just like,
Vanshika.
yeah, so I just like to start with looking back at your journey, and it's been a long journey from 2007 to now. What are some of the challenges or some of the things that have changed over the years?
Vanshika, so many things have changed on the ground, right? So I have to say, when we first started working in Pali district in Rajasthan, it was, we would go and talk to parents and they'd be like, yes, I'm happy to send my child to school, but where are the schools? Because the schools used to be at a distance. And so we had to do all these things like running bridge courses, residential bridge camps, because access to schooling itself was a big challenge at that time, right? And so with the Right to Education Act, that is something that gave us a big tailwind, because then we'd be like, listen, there is a school and there's a primary school within a kilometer of the village, and there is a middle school within 3 kilometers of the village. And that change was transformational, especially in very rural and remote areas. And any areas where we'd find that there should be a school and there wasn't, you could actually talk to the district administration and get a school started there. So that was a big change, I would say, in our work. The second really big one came with the launch of the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign. Because beforehand, I think it took us an enormous amount of energy in just convincing people that girls' education is important. But with a national campaign, with every poster and everything having that slogan, that conversation, I have to say, became much easier in some ways to have. At least it was a given that girls' education is important, and now let's just get into how we solve for your particular problem that you may be facing. And I also have to say there's a third thing, and that was really a big change, and I think has been transformative, specifically for tribal girls, is the start of the residential schools, the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya. These are residential schools for girls. They get provided with everything. Everything is taken care of, completely free. And that has actually also been really good, because parents who are migrating, who go off, and then or the girl is alone at home and they have so many concerns, now at least for those girls there is a residential facility. There's one in each block, especially in the educationally backward blocks, and that has also given a massive tailwind. So those are some of the infrastructure changes that we have seen, and advocacy changes, right, in terms of just the campaign, that has actually been quite transformative on the ground.
Since your work has kind of it's been in partnership with state governments, and I was curious to know, have there been any instances of resistance or pushback from local leaders or political actors, or how has that negotiation sort of panned out? Because I
Yeah.
understand that with infrastructure there is still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of bringing kids to school, and there's a mindset also attached with it in terms of sending girl children to to school especially. So how has the work been, or what are the negotiations that have had to be made in
Yeah.
that space?
I think, see, there are challenges, setbacks, or the resistance is actually on all fronts. Because the way Educate Girls is working, if you think about it, we don't control or own anything. Everything is through partnership and influence, right? You don't control the community. And so, therefore, you have to change those mindsets through dialogue and through constantly, gently kind of influencing and taking people along on a journey. You don't control the schools. So, you better be working really in partnership with the school administration, with the school management committees, with the teachers, because they don't have to work with you, right? So, and then finally, the government. Again, there is no control. If they don't want to, they don't have to work with us. They can just shut the door in our face. So, actually, across all of Educate Girls as stakeholders, there is always going to be resistance. There's always going to be challenge. And However, we are mobilizers at heart. That is what this organization really is. Our heart beats for the girl child, and we will mobilize whoever is required. And that mobilization, the only way we can do it, Vanchika, is by finding common ground. And that's what you do at a community level, at a school level, or at a government level. And at a government level, because you asked for that specifically, I think finding ground, common ground, is easier because they have also signed on to the sustainable development goals. That's exactly what we are working for. They also want to see all the girls in school. They've got a national campaign going. We want exactly the same thing. So at least there's goal alignment. And therefore you can have a dialogue, and you can actually have an authentic partnership and collaboration.
And because I'm speaking of sort of also understanding that the Education Girls runs on the efforts of Team Balikas and a lot of field staff. So I also was curious to know what kinds of invisible labor also goes in sustaining this work that the world doesn't see.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful question, by the way. I love that because there is the labor that is involved, which is significant, right? We go door to door and we knock on every single door in the village. Just that in itself, right? And sometimes those doors can be on the top of a mountain. Sometimes they can be across the river, and our team Balika and our frontline staff are there for every last door. So no girl. Our whole thing is we're constantly panicking, saying, "Did we miss somebody out? Was there a girl, behind that mountain and that we didn't see? And there's maybe one house there that we have missed." So there's that constant sort of piece, and that requires an enormous amount of labor. That requires an enormous amount of effort. And it's not like you just have to go once, you have to go multiple times. Today, there was nobody in the house. Tomorrow, they were there, but they want you to talk to the mother in law, they want you to talk to somebody else. Like, it's a constant piece, right? But I think your question is really beautiful, like about the invisible labor that we don't see. And that's kind of given me a little bit of pause. And so, thinking about that, I think we have to understand that we at Educate Girls are in the business of optimism and action. And how do you that effort to constantly keep your hope up, that nahi aaj darwaza nahi khula kal khulega. Today they didn't talk to us, but tomorrow they will, right? However many doors that kind of shut in your face, but to be back again and again, I think that keeping that hope alive, keeping that optimism, and then converting that into action on a daily basis, I would say, is the sort of invisible labor.
Thank you for that. It's really good to know and good to hear. And I want to sort of now backtrack to about how you started this, and you've often spoken about your own interrupted education when you've talked about the work. And I was curious to know that as a woman leader, what other
Mhm.
lived experiences that shape the way you approach grassroots work. For example, your class positionality, gender, and even privilege that comes with it. And how do you
Mhm.
then sort of navigate being both an insider because of your tremendous work with communities, and also as an outsider who is sort of urban educated and has so much global exposure and experience? So yeah.
Gosh, you're killing me with your questions. This is again a really, really fabulous one. I think this sort of we are seeing the world in sort of black and white, right? There's urban and rural, and this is okay, and that is not, and they're not sending their daughters, and we are. Like, I think there is that sort of perception, right? One of the things that I feel, and which also helps me navigate across um, these very extreme sort of places, is this absolute belief that we're not that different, because patriarchy stains us all. Somewhere it's a light pink, and somewhere it's a deep red. Right? It's just the shade which is different. So whether you are, even in your own homes, in urban homes, and if the doorbell rings, who gets up to open the door? Majority of the time, I'm saying, if every member is, there is patriarchy, even in the smallest thing like that. For every working woman who's in an urban area, right? She's stepping out to make $1 million pitch. And as soon as she closes that door, she's thinking, फ्रिज में दही था क्या बच्चों के लंच के लिए? that again is a stain of patriarchy in a way, right? That you carry that. So whether you are in an urban environment, whether you are in a rural environment, the the patriarchal norms are still the same. The fight is still the same. The struggle is kind of the same. So I would say I navigated by keeping that gender lens on, and you have to unlearn in every surrounding, and you have to learn in every surrounding. This question of the insider outsider, I think that's also a fabulous question. I think as a we our work is as an insider because it is community driven. It's driven by the tens of thousands of Teen Balika volunteers we have on the ground. And so it's not like that Vanshika and Safeena went to somebody's door and knocked on it and lectured them about sending their daughters to school, right? It is, and like they have their own slogan, which is Mera gaon, meri samasya, main hi samadhan. That it's my village, my problem, and I'm the solution. So the entire model, 95% of the people who work in this organization are from the same villages, same blocks, districts, states. They come from the same lived experiences. And so, therefore, everything is run by and through community ownership and community voices and led by the community. Um, from an outsider lens, specifically, let's say my own lens of having the urban exposure and a global exposure, I would say that has actually helped me, that exposure has helped me in ways of how the foundation of the model was laid. So that outsider lens is a learning lens that you can bring to your work. So, for example, I worked in the Amazon jungle with Shuar tribes, right? So when I came to India and I started this work, I had worked in areas where you have 40 homes in the jungle, and then you walk 2 days, and then another 40 homes. So working in rural and tribal wasn't a new thing for me. I was actually very comfortable. I kind of knew how to navigate and how to set up strong models, even in the remotest of areas. Actually, I'm more comfortable building. I have no experience of working in urban areas. I'm only comfortable building, designing, scaling. So I think that outsider perspective actually has helped me to build the model the way it is today. All of those learnings I was able to bring to the table. But the organization, the way it runs, is completely an insider perspective. It's from run by the people, from the same areas.
You've spoken about the three P's often, and you've spoken about poverty, patriarchy, and policy. So, if you had to sort of think of the least discussed problem or hindrance or barrier to girls' education in India, how would you sort of describe it? What would you
Yeah,
say?
I think, yeah, and I think that's again a very good question. I think like as a physician, sometimes you're treating the symptoms without looking at the disease, right? Like, so if you're a physician, you want to look at what the disease is rather than just saying, I'm going to treat your fever, or I'm going to treat, they'll do a blood test and say, actually, it's malaria, it's whatever. And I think in gender programming, if I had to put a lens, because sometimes we only see what is in the front. Um, but to your question, I think the biggest challenge and where the treatment has to be provided is three areas. One is aspiration building, what I call aspiration, confidence, and support. First of all, girls don't have aspiration because we never build it for them. Because their parents and their gatekeepers also don't have any aspiration for them. ये क्या करेगी? Collector थोड़ा बनना है, roti तो बनानी है, right? Like all of these things. So first is that we are lacking in aspiration for our women and girls, and therefore she has no aspiration for herself. Uh, Second is confidence. If you don't have aspiration, then you don't have confidence. And sometimes it's a mixed match. Maybe the girl has confidence, but the parents don't have confidence. So, how do you make sure that the girl and the family and the community has confidence in that girl? And the third is about the support. We need to make sure that we provide her with the support. But wo dono cheezein, sometimes the girl has both aspiration and confidence, but the family is not supportive and therefore she can't. So that is the treatment, is aspiration, confidence, and support that has to be delivered to the girl, but also to her gatekeepers, to her family, and us as a community. So that's how I would say is we don't talk about it enough. But that is what I find is to be the underlying basis of all gender issues and therefore all gender programming.
what kind of things have you then sort of heard from girls returning to school after dropping out, and what do they themselves sort of say about their experiences of being back in school and being back at it?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to break it down. One is how the girls feel about themselves, right? And especially, I've had girls who've been out of school for 8 years, 10 years, sitting at home and thought, ki, this is all that life has to offer. But when you come back, you do your 10th and suddenly you're like, मैं job के लिए भी apply कर सकती हूँ. I can apply for a loan also if I want to. Like, a little girl, she wanted to run her shop. And she says, but I want a bank loan to buy more stock. And to get a formal bank loan, I need a 10th certificate. Like they find that they're blocked, in so many ways. So one is just that own personal transformation. Their own aspiration goes up. Their confidence goes up. A girl was telling me how she was so proud. I asked her, I said, give me one thing that changed for you. And she says, Bhaiya works in Pune and he wanted to buy a property. And because he's so far away, and but he said, ki wo hai na ghar pe. She will look at the contract. She'll go and see if the house is okay. She can put the deposit down. And she said, how much confidence he had in me. And that to her is that respect from her brother that she's seeing because she is educated. I have to tell you this story. I just met this woman, came back to education after a long time, just passed her 10th grade. And as it happens, her son also took the 10th grade exam this year. Okay. And she told me, she said, I scored more than him. He goes to school. I studied on my own. I sit in a camp on the floor on a dari. I also do the housework. And she's like, my son is saying, how did you do it? क्या किया अम्मा तुमने? And for her, just the fact that her son respects her and is looking at her with very different eyes today, that's the self transformation that we see, right? And then you have their families. I mean, I see the negative side of it a little bit. Families are like, जब से 10वीं पास की है, हमारी बात सुनती नहीं है. Like, the families are seeing that voice and that agency kind of. We always smile when we hear that because we're like, that's a good thing. Because she now knows that she's able to put her voice across. But we see parents who say, I went back to meet this girl, and her father started lecturing me about girls' education. Jabki his daughter was out of school, and we had to struggle with him so much. But now she's married, she's working as an Anganwadi worker. And then he said to me, he says, you have to educate all the girls because today the world is built for the educated. If you're not educated, you will be exploited like animals. And I was like, thank you for telling me this. But that's the change that you see is a change in conversation in families, and that's a change in conversation around the communities as well, right? So that's the big shift that you see from the self to family and then to the community. And it's quite dramatic. It's amazing to see that flip, like in a year of, that your life can change so much.
Yeah, it's so good to hear these anecdotes because often when you think of what would be the outcomes of an intervention, you think of very measurable outcomes, increase in enrollment, so and so number of girls are coming in and so forth. So also in the sector and the space that you work in, I was curious to know how do you engage with donors and funders, and because there is a certain amount of measurable outcomes that you can show, but the impact is so massive. It's not just in numbers, it's changing and transforming lives of so many women, so many households.
Yeah.
And I know about
No.
education,
Mhm.
yeah, with the
Yeah,
whole,
sorry, go finish.
the first ever development impact bond in education that Educate Girls also talks about and works with. So I was curious to know what you think of funding and outcomes and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think again for me, it really comes back down to the girl, right? The genesis of the world's first development impact bond in education, which by the way, people said you can't do it in India. You guys are data poor. Even if it's evaluated, who will believe your results? Like it took me 3 years of struggle to even be able to pilot a payment by results transaction. Imagine, like I'm saying to you, Vanshika, pay me after I deliver the results. You're like, I don't, how will I believe it? Like it was just kind of insane. And it's also like a great story. It's an India story, right? And it was run in Rajasthan. It was run in a rural area. It had a gold standard evaluation that showed that over like 92% of the girls were brought back into school and were staying in school. Learning outcomes were equal to an additional year of schooling. The world was kind of blown away. And we made the transaction open source so that everybody else could follow it. And now there are 220 plus bonds in the world. that are following in the footsteps, deploying almost $1 billion worth of social impact capital. So it's been great. But the reason that we did it was not because of any of this. We did it because we know that there are a large number of girls who are out of school. We understand that you don't want a program that is just simply replicating. You want a program that is actually replicating results. And so we wanted to measure it in a way, the payment by results, a performance based contract. The goal was that we should be able to tie every donation to the result that it achieves, right? So if you give me a donation, you should know what is the result that this is having. And anecdotes are great, but you need hard numbers. And so we measure enrollment, retention, learning outcomes for all of our children, right? And that is what we hold ourselves accountable to, and through external evaluations, through very 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 rigorous evidence-backed studies, because that's what you want to do, is you want to identify all girls who are out of school. You want to make sure they're in school and staying, so that's your enrollment outcome and your retention outcome. And then you want to measure their learning and to see that they are actually moving forward. And it's the same with Pragati. We're looking at how many of our girls are coming into the program, how many of them are passing their 10th, but we're also looking at saying how many got a new bank account, which they didn't have before, how many got connected to social protection, social welfare schemes. So all of this together. Um, but yes, we're very lucky that we have donors who support us in a, how should I say this? We're very, very lucky. We have long-term partners who have funded us for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because they follow our approach of problem solving, not actually being project based, right? So the organization stays in a village 6 to 8 years because we want to see the problem close forever. You don't want to have to go back and do it again, right? If you work for 6 to 8 years, you work with 10 cohorts, which is a generation. So we're very happy that our donors understand that education is a long-term business. Mindset change is a long-term business, and actually support you through that. And that's when you see the multiplier effect of women and girls. And then the multiplier is massive through, health outcomes and child marriage rates dropping, and you name it. 9 of the 17 sustainable goals can be met if we just educated all our girls.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I have no words because it's so huge, and the way you're explaining it, it just breaks it down into so many multiple factors. I'll have to probably go back and read more on this. But apart from this, I just sort of want to come down to the last few questions that we have in terms of
Mhm.
what does this award then mean for you in terms of also scalability, or how will it impact your work, and what next?
Yeah. So this is actually, so in the last 18 years, just to put things in perspective, in the last 18 years, we have been able to mobilize over 2 million girls to come back into the classrooms where they belong. We have also improved learning outcomes for 2.4 million children. So that's been like, wow, great, 18 years. Now, over the next 10 years, we want to be even more ambitious, and we want to be able to reach 10 million learners over the next. So it's a 10 by 10 strategy, 10 million learners in 10 years. But our ambition doesn't end there. We don't just want scale, we actually also want depth, and we want quality. So I'll give you an example. This year, the topper in the state open school exams in Rajasthan is a Pragati girl, which is our second chance program. The topper in Madhya Pradesh is a Pragati girl. So not only do we want the scale to get to 10 million, but we want all the toppers. We want quality. We want our girls to actually be doing really well in the exam. So we want to marry scale and quality and impact in a big way. And so we're setting ourselves some very, very ambitious goals.
And just a last question to wrap it up. I think recognition at this scale also brings a lot of attention to you personally. And has that sort of visibility come with its challenges, or has that only helped you to push more for your work and advocate more strongly? How has this whole experience been?
Yeah, I think because we're in the business of mindset change, right? We're in the business of um, girls' education, and which is just here. So if India woke up tomorrow and magically believed that their sons and daughters were equal, you wouldn't need and educate girls, right? And that's it. It's just here. It's just our thinking. So the more visibility, the more we're able to talk about our story, the more we're able to get our message across, and hopefully it changes some minds. So we're very grateful. We're very, very grateful for the attention that it is bringing to the cause and to our girls and their future.
Thank you so much, Safina, for sharing these insights so generously. And yeah, this conversation, I think, has been a reminder of how deeply layered the struggle of girls' education is, and how change is built through this big vision that you carry, and also this everyday invisible work that so many of your members, so many of your volunteers put in. And congratulations once again on the award. And thank you so much for being with us today, Safina.
Thank you.